Good morning, everyone. Today we will be going through case study 2 from your practice paper. All right. Now, for this case study, right, I would first like to go through some of the extracts. Okay, so you can see that this case study is mainly about what the European countries have gone through over the past few years, and I think boys and girls, think of them as stories, okay? Because it's very hard to remember, okay? You think of all these things that are happening like stories, okay? There's a timeline and things progress, okay? So for some countries, it becomes better. For some countries, it becomes worse. Think of all these things as stories. And I want you to remember all these stories because all these examples that you read about in case studies can be used in your examinations for examples, all right, in your essays and so on. Okay, so you need to know what's happening around the world. All right, so okay, you know about how over the last few years, you know that Europe, there are many European countries which have faced high public debt, and many of them have actually started to use austerity measures, okay? And that was over the past few years, all right? So I will first talk about, I won't go through all the extracts, but I'll first talk about Italy, okay? So you can see that from the graphs here, figure 3 and figure 4, you can see that the labor productivity of Italy is this line, okay? It has actually fallen, right? Labor productivity of Italy has actually fallen. It doesn't seem, the country doesn't seem to be in very good shape, right? Now, if you link to the LRAS, labor productivity falls would mean that the quality of labor actually falls. There will be some kind of impact on the LRAS. Agree with me? Okay, so now for extract 5, we are talking about Italy. Okay, and over the last few years, Italy hasn't been doing very well, right? Because this is a 2013 article, right? And it talks about how there have been fiscal austerity where basically the government reduces their G and increases the taxes on consumers and firms, okay? And you know that this will have a negative impact on the economy, right? You can link to AD and so on. Okay. So it has caused the economy to shrink in the sense that maybe there's some kind of a recession, right? Real national income falls. And however, there is some gain because this reduction in G and increase in T is showing some kind of result, and the European Commission is expecting Italy to have a budget surplus in the near future, right? So Italy is not doing well. We talk about lackluster productivity, where the productivity levels are dropping. At the same time, there are wage increases. Okay, all these things account for how there is a loss of competitiveness against other European countries like Germany and even from low-cost Asian producers. Okay, so think of it as a story. As I said, these are some of the problems that Italy is facing. It is the labor productivity is falling, is losing export competitiveness from other Asian countries. And then when we talk about Mr. Monti's agenda, he's the Prime Minister of Italy, right? So it talks about how he's starting to use structural reforms. And I want to emphasize on this word structural reforms because it's something that you see in the news all the time. Even when we talk about Abenomics, right? The 3 arrows of Abenomics, the third arrow is actually about the use of structural reforms, which are actually market-oriented supply-side policies, structural reforms, okay? And boys and girls, just take note that market-oriented supply-side policies are totally different from the other one, which we call interventionist policies. Okay, these are not interventionist policies. Okay, so when you were doing this case study, right, a lot of people started talking about increase in G on R&D, increase in G on education, and it's totally out of point because here we're not talking about international policies, increase G on education and so on. We are very specific. We are talking about market-oriented supply-side policies, which will also increase the RAS. Okay, many of these policies increase the I. Increase investments, all right? They help to make the markets work better, for example. Okay, for example, you talk about how so far in Italy, right, many long-standing employees are virtually impossible to sack. Okay, and the newcomers, it's so difficult for them to enter a job. Now, if it's relatively easier to sack long-standing employees who don't deserve to be employed anymore, or they are not taking things seriously, right? If government allows them to if the government makes it easier for employees to sack them, then I think investors will be more willing to invest. Definitely the investments will increase, right? If government makes it easier for long-standing employees to be sacked, because right now there seems to be many rules that stand in the way of allowing all these long-term employees to be sacked if they don't deserve to be continued to be hired, right? So all these things are market-oriented supply-side policies. They aim to make the markets work better, to function better, and most of the time, they have an impact on the investments. Okay, although it might affect other components of AD, but most of them encourage investments. Okay, so and even about undertaking measures to encourage new entrants. It brings about more competition in the economy. More competition, more investors can actually invest in the economy, right? When you liberalize the economy, so definitely the investments will increase as well, right? Because foreign firms are actually allowed to enter the industry, right? Whether foreign or local. Now, the next extra I would like to talk about, and okay, so that's the case of Italy, right? Generally has not been doing very well over the last few years. However, the government has tried to use some structural reforms. Now, next, let's talk about Britain. Okay, so Britain has also, over the last 4 years after the global financial crisis, also faced a few years of very big growth with some recessions in between. Okay, although I have to say that in 2015, the growth in Britain was generally stronger as compared to other European countries. So it really depends on which you are talking about. In 2015, it's one of the stronger European countries, which probably explain why the Prime Minister was elected again. Okay, because the growth was better than other European countries. One of the reasons, the people felt that he was generally doing a good job. So one of the things that the government was doing definitely was credit easing, where you use interest rate policy, right? Okay, lower the interest rates. Okay, so that the bank, credit easing, where the banks will lower their own interest rates so that C&I can increase and the AD can increase. And you know that when I increases, the RAS also increases and shifts to the right as well. Now, take note that fiscal austerity was also being used in Britain. Now, take note that instead of using fiscal austerity, they might actually phrase it another way. For example, they may talk about restrictive fiscal spending. Okay, there are different ways to phrase different things. So don't think that this is the only way. For example, when we talk about structural reforms, just now, another word for market-oriented supply-side policies, right? In the A-levels, okay, I'm going backwards. In the A-levels during last year, when they talked about market-oriented supply-side policies, Okay, instead of structural reforms, they didn't use that word. They used the word free market policies, which are policies that help the market to function better. Basically the same meaning as market-oriented and structural reforms. So take note that in the exam, you may never have seen that word before, but you must come up with an intelligent guess to make an intelligent guess on what you think that policy is. All right, you have to make an intelligent guess, look at the case study properly and make a guess. All right, you have to take a risk. Next, I would like to talk about extract 7. Okay, about how George Osborne, okay, has one of the Chancellor of the UK, he has accelerated cuts in the corporation tax. And I would just like to say that, hey, you know what, that this move seems to be paying off. This article was in 2012, right? It happened in 2012, but you notice that in 2015, quite a number of foreign firms have actually shifted to the UK, right? This could be one of the reasons which has attracted foreign firms to the UK, and at the same time, they also increase the UK's national minimum wage, which I'm sure has some kind of impact on the income inequality, right? But okay, now I have a question for you. When you want to link the use of minimum wage to income inequality, are you going to draw any graph? When you want to link to income inequality. Okay, so that's my question to you. Okay, so I think that's all I want to say. I won't talk about Australia and the Irish economy. Okay, so I'll just move on. Now, A part 1 is about the definition for the term labour productivity. Take note that it's actually about the amount of output that can be produced per unit of labour. Okay, so I think you take note of this particular term, per unit of labour input. Alright, so it is defined as the output per unit that can be produced, that is produced per unit of labor input. Alright, per unit of labor. Labor productivity is defined as the amount of output that each unit of labor, let's say, can produce. Also can. Alright, now let's go on to A part 2, describe the changes in labor productivity. Most of you got this right, so I won't elaborate more about this. Basically, just now we mentioned that Italy's labor productivity has fallen, generally not very productive, generally lackluster productivity. And on the other hand, there has been an increase in labor productivity for Germany, right? Question B, compare, you think about similarity and difference most of the time, right? Most of the time, okay? Sometimes the questions only require you to talk about difference. Alright, so there will be a special case. But in this case, it is very clear that there is one similarity, which is that GDP increases for both Italy and Germany. GDP at constant prices means that you use constant prices from the base year to calculate the GDP, which actually refers to real GDP, right? Okay? And the difference would be that Germany's GDP at constant prices increases. Okay, I don't think I like this phrasing. Can you please say that it increases at a faster rate? And this is something that I've gone through many times. This term, I think this is the third time I've gone through this, okay? That the real GDP of both countries has increased. The GDP at constant prices of both countries has increased, but one increases at a faster rate than the other. Okay, please use this phrasing. Now for C part 1, this define the term fiscal austerity. Most of you got this part right, that G will fall and T will increase, and that's good, but that's not the end of the story. You need to tell me the purpose. This is the purpose, which is, some of you said, to reduce the budget deficit or to reduce the public debt. I'm fine with either. You need to tell me the purpose of fiscal austerity before you can get that 1 mark. Okay, C part 2, with reference to extract 5, explain the case. So, okay, boys and girls, you need to refer to the extract. This is not an essay, it's a case study, which means that you need to refer. Now, explain the case against fiscal austerity. Why is it? Okay, so I'm thinking aloud again. They are asking me to explain the case against fiscal austerity. Why is it not good? What are the cons? Why is it not good? Okay? In what sense? What are the problems? Okay, such that you might not want to use it. All right, and definitely in extract 5, they mention, I already said just now, okay, I'm repeating myself here. They actually mentioned about how, here, this part, here, extract 5, here, okay, how it will cause the economy to shrink, which means that there might be a recession where the real national output falls. And therefore, I think it is clear that they want you to talk about how with G falling and T increasing, it can cause the AD to fall and the real national income to fall, causing a recession, causing the economy to shrink by 2.3% during the year. All right? So, okay, so please be clear about this. And so that is the case against fiscal austerity, that it might cause a recession, and therefore maybe fiscal austerity should not be used, right? Should not be used because of all these problems. Now, next, part D, assess whether a fall in interest rate would necessarily lead to a rise in investments. Okay, so assess, basically, obviously, assess whether, you need to give me two sides, obviously, all right? Assess whether, I repeat, you definitely must give me two sides. And okay, this part was not good, okay? Now, I just like to make it clear that when interest rate falls, okay, expected rate of returns does not increase, which is what most of you wrote, okay? And this is unacceptable, okay? This is just totally wrong. Okay, it does not increase the expected rate of returns. What it does is that it lowers the cost of borrowing. As a result, there'll be more investment projects where the expected rate of returns, okay, there'll be more investment projects. Okay, you can explain it this way. The way that they did it was a bit complicated. More investment projects where the expected rate of returns, or the MEI, okay, exceeds the cost of borrowing. All right, I don't want you to please don't say that the expected rate of returns increases when the interest rate falls, because it does not. It just means that there will be more investment project where the expected rate of returns is greater than the cost of borrowing, because when the interest rate falls, it does not affect the expected rate of returns. It only affects the cost of borrowing. It makes it lower, that's all. And therefore, there'll be more investment projects that will be profitable. Okay, so, and then you refer, we refer to the extract on how there's been credit easing in the UK, which has caused the interest rate to fall. All right, and for the antithesis, boys and girls, you need to use the extract. For those of you, okay, I've marked. Some of you just told me about, fall in business confidence because they are pessimistic about the economic outlook, but you did not refer to extract at all. I give you a 0, okay, because you should have referred to the extract. It's a case study, it's not an essay, okay? So firms may be pessimistic about the economic outlook of Europe because the economy is expected to shrink. And when there's an economic recession, that generally people's economic outlook, consumers and investors' economic outlook will generally be worsened, right? And therefore, it may not lead to a rise in investment because they have a negative economic outlook. Okay, I don't want to talk about the case of government policy. Okay, I think that was the main point that you can talk about. Now I'm going to skip E, okay, because okay, I don't really particularly like the phrasing of this question. I will just move on, okay, to part F. Now, I think try not to look at investments as rise in human capital. I don't think that is a very accurate way to look at it. In terms of investments, I think just focus on the increase in spending on capital goods. Don't focus really on the human capital, okay? I don't want to go through this question, so I'll just go through part F, all right? Now, part F is an important question. Okay, in recent years, if you look at economics journals, economics magazines, right, like The Economist, there is a lot of talk about structural reforms and market-oriented supply-side policies. A lot of talk about it. Okay, so boys and girls, when you let's discuss the effectiveness of the minimum wage in achieving equity and market-oriented supply-side policies in achieving two goals: the microeconomic goal of equity. Okay, I repeat that the government has two microeconomic goals. One is economic efficiency. The other one is the issue of equity. Equity is important. Okay, and international competitiveness. Most of the time, I think about export competitiveness when I think about international competitiveness, right? So minimum wage, you need to link to equity and export competitiveness. Okay, market-oriented supply-side policies linked to equity and export international competitiveness as well. Okay, so you need to refer, boys and girls, you need to refer. When, let's say, the question is about minimum wage, just give me one line about how UK's minimum wage has gone up. That is all. I don't need you to elaborate and quote so much from the extract. Just give me one line that the minimum wage has increased. Okay, you explain a bit about the minimum wage, draw the graph. All right, and I think the dotted lines are missing. Okay, you should have shown that. Okay, for those of you who don't understand the minimum wage, let me explain now. Okay, by right, the wages, by right, the wage rate should be determined by forces of demand and supply. The demand for labor and the supply of labor, right? Okay, and this is the wage rate that should be established by right. This should be the wage rate that is determined by the market, and this is the quantity of labor that would be hired by the market. Okay, this quantity of labor, QE, would be the amount of labor who would have a job if you leave things to the price mechanism, to the forces of demand and supply. But let's say the government says, things that, hey, the wage rate as determined by market forces is too low. I need a higher wage rate. We need a minimum wage. That WE is too low. We need a higher wage rate. We need a minimum wage so that workers will have a higher wage to support their living, right? Their cost of living, right? To pay for their cost of living. So take note that with the imposition of the minimum wage, yes, workers who are hired, right, they are paid a minimum wage of WMIN. But, at that minimum wage, right, you can see that quantity supply of labor exceeds the quantity demanded for labor. Quantity supplied for labor exceeds quantity demanded of labor. There is a surplus of labor. Okay, when the surplus of labor means that there are people who want to work, but they don't have a job. There is a surplus of labor of people who want to work, right? So there definitely is unemployment, and this is actually what we call classical unemployment, right? Due to the imposition of a minimum wage, and that is a severe limitation to this policy. I can tell you that, and this is a severe limitation of the policy. Yes, those people who find a job, those people who find a job, they have higher wages. They went up. It helps to protect the income level. It helps to improve equity. I agree with you that it does help to improve equity. And please don't draw the long run supply side graph. Please, it's just, don't draw the SR short run aggregate supply side graph either. Please don't draw all these graphs because they totally do not link. You can't use them. It's just totally irrelevant to use these graphs. So you just link it like that. But in order to explain the negative impact of minimum wage, you need to draw the graph and tell me that, increase in unemployment. But boys and girls, this question is also not about unemployment. From unemployment, can you link back to inequity that due to a rise in the unemployed, these unemployed people, they don't have income, and this will cause inequity. This may in fact worsen the level of inequity. Alright, so boys and girls, don't stop at unemployment. This question is not about unemployment. link all the way to inequity. That would be great. Okay. At the same time, with the minimum wage, remember what I said? From minimum wage, you need to link to equity, which I've already done. You need to link to international competitiveness, right? Link. Okay, if you don't need to draw the graph, don't draw the graph, which is not required here, right? So with an increase in the unit labor cost, it adds on to the COP, okay, and therefore they need to increase the export. Okay, I don't want this line, okay? Just say from COP, increase they might need to increase the export prices, and therefore exports become less competitive. Okay, just like that will do. I don't need to talk about inflation, please don't. Okay, at the same time, okay, so when I talk about international competitiveness, okay, I'm sorry I didn't say this just now, but when you talk about international competitiveness, is the most important one I feel would be the export competitiveness, but you also can talk about in terms of investments that you're not competitive in terms of the ability to draw investments to your country. Okay, so but I do feel that the export competitiveness is key. Okay, so at the same time you increase the wages, right? This would definitely affect the expected rate of returns for foreign firms in the UK, and this would foreign firms from setting up factories and so on in the UK, and this can cause a fall in the FDI to the UK. Okay, don't need to link to AD. There is no need at all, because what you want to link to is international competitiveness. That UK, the fact that there's a fall in FDI, it means that it becomes less internationally competitive as an investment destination. Okay. Next, I would like to focus on market-oriented supply-side policies. Okay, and I've told you that this is really important, right? That market-oriented supply-side policies sorry, please give me a moment. That market-oriented supply-side policies, okay, that market-oriented supply-side policies impact equity and international competitiveness, right? Okay, let's talk about market-oriented supply-side policies for now. Okay, how to link to equity. For example, they talk about extension of working lives, pension reforms, and extending the working lives, which means that workers may work for a longer period of time. It definitely increases equity, right? Okay, so some of the labor market reforms, right, help to increase the equity, because with the extension of working lives, it means that elderly folk can continue to work, right? And which means that they have an income. Boys and girls, I thought that the link is not so clear. Make the link better. All these elderly folks, they continue to have an income, right? And therefore, it helps to reduce the income inequity in Italy. But take note that market-oriented supply-side policies, there are different kinds. And when you talk about greater ease in the hiring and firing of workers, you know, if some workers get fired, it can cause inequity to rise as well, right? So it really depends. It really depends, all right? Next, we also talk about if there's an increase in the retirement age, for example, it would mean that the quantity of labor in Italy increases, the supply of labor increases, and the wage rate for labor may fall. Okay, and because of that, the COP falls, exports may become more competitive. Okay, here, exports will become more competitive, and therefore it increases the international competitiveness of Italy, right? And with that, it will definitely make it will increase the attractiveness of Italy as an investment destination as well. So it is internationally competitive in terms of attracting investments. Okay, possible. All right. Okay, next I would like to talk about deregulation and privatization. Okay, with deregulation, okay, because originally there are a lot of monopolies in Italy, and there are some professions like the pharmaceutical, like the pharmacists, where they're very protected. Okay, so when there's greater competition, all right, with this greater competition in these product markets, it will cause the prices of all these goods, pharmaceutical goods, for example, to fall, and it may benefit the low-income families, which can help to achieve equity, right? At the same time, so I've linked to equity. At the same time, we want to link to export competitiveness, right? So we say that, hey, all these pharmaceutical products, if you allow more competition, okay, pharmaceutical products will basically the firms of all these pharmaceutical firms will become more efficient. They'll be more efficient. The COP can fall. All right, these export prices can fall, so the exports can be more competitive. Boys and girls, I tell you something. You have to link. You have to be able to link on the spot. Okay, you answer the question. The question here is not about economic growth. If your entire answer is about growth and you go and draw all those RAS graphs and so on, it is just not going to work because you're not answering the question. Whatever you're writing is irrelevant. Okay? And I would just like to talk about market-oriented supply-side policy in the form of lowering corporate taxes. Okay, in your lecture notes, I'd like to show you your lecture notes. Okay, on page 52 onwards, we talk about the market-oriented supply-side policies. Many of them increase the investments or other components of AD. Okay, for example, when we talk about tax and welfare reforms, we talk about the lowering, look at the second paragraph here, the lowering of corporate taxes. Now, a lot of you know the investments increase, you talk about AD. But market-oriented supply-side policies, you also need to talk about the LRAS, because with more investments, there's an increase in the quantity of capital goods, LRAS will increase. Okay? Take note that all these things actually increase the investments. All right, but I didn't mention the RAS here. Okay, I told you that we are linking to equity, and for equity, you should not be talking about RAS, right? Because we are linking to equity. But if you link to growth, if the question requires you to link to growth, then you should. Now, for example, we talk about lowering our corporate tax here to create a pro-business environment. Definitely, with lowering our corporate tax, the firms will be able to lower the export prices, right? Because their costs fall, they'll be able to lower the export prices. Their exports will be more competitive, and also it helps the UK to become more internationally competitive, because you are able to draw all these firms from overseas. You are able to attract all this FDI, okay, because they are attracted, right, when you lower your corporate tax. Okay, however, it can worsen inequity, right? Inequity is like some are earning more at the expense of others. Some people's incomes are so high, some others are not. It doesn't just have to be a comparison between workers, high and low income workers. It doesn't just have to be comparison between that. But take note that MNCs, they are firms, they are earning very high profits already. Many of them are earning high profits. All right. And if you lower their taxes further, their corporate taxes further, it's definitely going to worsen inequity, right? Because they will be able to earn even higher levels of profits, and even higher level of profits. Okay, so it can worsen the level of inequity. All right. Boys and girls, for this kind of policy questions, I think it would be very good if you compare that. You tell me which is the one that you think is a better policy. Offer a judgment on which one you think is the better policy. All right. And it's okay. There's no model answer for that, as long as you're able to justify. All right. So here, that the overall evaluation here, they actually make a judgment. Okay, Cambridge has often talked about the importance of getting students to make a judgment, and you, no matter what, you need to do so. Even if you think that you're not sure, you need to take a risk and try. All right, so they say that here minimum wage seems to be the policy that is not as great as market oriented, because minimum wage helps to achieve the equity, but the equity issue, right, achieve the goal of equity but at the expense of international competitiveness. On the other hand, market oriented policies seem to be able to achieve both generally, although there might be some problems, but generally it is able to achieve both. And then you give other clever comments, and I thought that the comment about how there are trade-offs between equity and international competitiveness, sometimes you can achieve one, but it might be at the expense of the other. I thought that's a clever comment. Okay, so and I think, boys and girls, that when you talk about policies, I like to use the word root cause. That whatever policies that you use, right, you try to make sure that it addresses the root cause of the problem. I thought that that's significant. All right, so and you tell me, and it'd be very good if you can tell me exactly what the root cause of the problem is and how the policy that you use can solve the root cause of the problem. For example, essays that we talk about for inflation. Let's say Singapore faces import price push inflation. That is the root cause of our inflation, for example. Then if that's the case, then given that the root cause is import price push inflation, then we would need to use contractionary monetary policy in the form of gradual and modest appreciation of exchange rates, right? So consider the root cause when you talk about policy questions. I think that's a very good kind of overall evaluation to make. Okay, so that's the end of CS2. Okay, and that's the end of this video lesson. Thank you.